So I run two multi-six-figure businesses, and people frequently have a hard time believing that I'm as ADHD as I truly am. In fact, I didn't necessarily believe I was as ADHD as I am for a long time. And then I started to realize what being ADHD meant, and realized I'm actually incredibly ADHD. I'm just really good at organizing. Building our events for the past 2 years, there are two areas that I have really built up quite a bit of knowledge about how to manage in order to maximize productivity for individuals with ADHD, and that is space management and also just a little bit of managing your biology or your physiology. So I get comments a lot about my space, and I get it. Like, I've obviously put quite a bit of time into organizing my space and the paintings and the lighting and the violins and all of these pieces. And I will say, when I originally started putting all this together, I didn't necessarily understand what I was doing and building out a space that really was built for me to stay focused and be peak productive in. But the more I've learned, the more I realized that I did things that I thought I would just enjoy. And then I realized there's actually reasons behind it. First and foremost, if you notice the lighting, not only can I change the colors of each of the lights in order to shift how my brain is really absorbing light and wavelengths and stuff, but all of the lighting comes from behind me to direct my attention forward. So it bounces off the walls and pulls my attention towards a focal point directly in front of me, which is literally directly in front of me, which is my computer. Secondly, my computer actually is up against a wall so that I am not getting distracted by looking out the window. I'm not getting pulled in 100 different directions, but I have made sure that all of my lighting, everything is pulling me forward. Secondly, you can't necessarily see it, but I actually do have some greenery around here. I've spent some time actually figuring out how do I not kill plants immediately, because greenery has been shown to reset the brain a little bit. It helps you absorb more information. It also helps calm the brain down. So all of these things to me are super important. I also, if I absolutely need it, I can pull up something green on my screen and have some greenery right there. I also try and go outside on my lunch breaks at least, so that I have that kind of exposure reset moment for my headspace. Thirdly, you can't necessarily see this, but I have really tall cathedral ceilings in here. That's really great for things like creativity. There have been a couple of studies have done that have shown that people in rooms with taller ceilings tend to think about things more creatively, process things a little bit more creatively, which is great when it's time to be creative. And I sit on my floor with my markers and my big pad of paper and get creative. And it's not so great when I'm trying to focus. So I've learned to do a couple of things to help kind of lower my focus zone and really pull myself back in. One of them is glasses. So I will actually use these glasses as much to block the blue lights coming from my screen as I do to actually create a frame around my eyes and pull my focus in so that I'm not getting pulled in so many different directions. Now, if that's not really helping and I'm really having a hard time still, I will sometimes actually go so far as to pulling out one of my ball caps and put that on, because again, it actually creates a lowered ceiling effect, and so it helps support focus. And lastly, I talk about this all the time, but get yourself a scent that is just for your office, just for when you are working or in productivity mode. We have this custom scent created for the Grow Retreat, built for the ADHD brain, based around different scents that do different things in the brain. And that was all well and good and really exciting. But what we realized was that we actually trained the brain that when it smells this, it's time to focus. And it may take some time for you to train your brain, but trust me, it's worth it. Secondly, the physiology. So once you've got your space set up in a way that's going to support you staying focused, make sure you're not sabotaging yourself by what you are eating, drinking, or doing with your body. Now, this is really important because a big part of ADHD is regulating or understanding what is going on, and knowing that part of ADHD is a challenge with regulating and production of dopamine in the brain, which is where we can have problems getting into that focus mode and getting into that productivity mode. So if you know your body's maybe not the best at dopamine regulation off the bat, let's try and not sabotage that. First and foremost, don't eat sugar, or at least try and scale back the amount of sugar that you are eating, because sugar creates these artificial waves and crashes and makes it even harder to regulate the dopamine, which makes it even harder to get into focus mode. Secondly, make sure you're drinking enough water. Water is one of the really important pieces that actually helps get information across the blood-brain barrier, helps take care of the brain, keeps the brain peak performing. Drink enough water. Track your water. Make sure you are drinking at least 60 ounces of water per day. At least. Get enough sleep. There is a whole bunch of studies that show that not getting enough sleep actually starts to create deprivation in the brain, which makes the brain not perform at peak. You can't be at your peak if your body is physically fighting against you. Next up, get at least a little bit of physical fitness. There's actually, again, all kinds of studies that show that getting some, doing some squats or doing some push-ups or going for a walk actually does produce dopamine, and it can actually help with regulating the dopamine and regulating all kinds of other hormones in in the body long term as well. Now, I know we all know to do these things. Eat less sugar, drink more water, get more sleep, work out more. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. Pick 3 of them and focus on getting those 3 really well integrated for yourself. Just 3. Just focus. Just one for starters, and then 2, and then 3. You don't have to hit all 4 of them, but trust me, if you can get 3 of them, you'll be doing this far sight better than you were before. There are a ton of other tools that I use to make sure that I can stay peak productive. I've got, my e-ink writers. I've got my calendar, project management software. I plan white space into my calendar so I have time for stuff to go wrong. I plan time into my calendar to do things like reply to emails and all the things that, I may not necessarily think to plan time for. I plan downtime so that my brain actually has the capacity to reset so I can be at my peak. But if I really had to come down to it, managing my space and managing what I put into and how I take care of my body has become a huge piece of how I manage to stay in peak performance mode as someone with ADHD running 2 companies and getting stuff done.